Kindergarten and first grade. Yesterday, we started watching things about an ecosystem. Do you remember some of the differences between ecosystems and habitats? The main one is that with an ecosystem, we're talking not just about the living things and what they need, but everything in a particular area. So kind of the difference is with a habitat, we're thinking specifically about the needs of an organism. Organism just means something that's alive, right? So we might look at a ladybug habitat, or we might look at a butterfly habitat, or a human habitat, or a lion habitat, or a dog habitat. And some of those habitats can overlap, right? A ladybug habitat and a butterfly habitat and a human habitat could all be in the same playground. But when we talk about an ecosystem, we're kind of looking more from up high down on everything together. So all the different organisms, living things that go together. And do you remember the video yesterday talked about how it's the living things, but it's also the things that are not alive. So the rocks and the dirt and the rivers, those are the main things, but there could be all sorts of non-living things in an ecosystem. So when we're talking about an ecosystem, we're kind of talking more broad, big picture here, rather than focused in on something really narrow, but an ecosystem could be really small. So that can be a little confusing. The main thing is with an ecosystem, we're looking at all the parts and how they go all together. Do you remember seeing that thing with the food chain in the video? And they talked about how it doesn't just go so neatly in a line. It kind of all interconnects and it webs all around. So with ecosystem, that's the kind of thing we're really going to be looking at a lot, is how it all just webs and interconnects all around. So we have a video coming up that we're going to be watching with this. Do you remember back to one of the needs and wants videos where there was a squirrel who was kind of packing his backpack to go for a hike? It's from those same people. Now, boys and girls, I am not telling you to ignore the video. I do want you to keep an eye on it. But I know you guys have the skills to kind of watch something and kind of do some other things at the same time. You don't have to. If you want to, the booklet we're going to make today is this one about the pond. We're going to do a quick overview of this pond paper, and then you can watch the video and color it all at the same time if you want to. You can do that separate also. So quick overview, pond. This is going to be our cover page of the booklet, right? So for sure, we want to make sure that one is colored nicely. Our definition, what pond means. A pond is a body of fresh water that is usually smaller than a lake. And a pond is an ecosystem. So it can be small. It doesn't have to be a great, big, huge thing to be an ecosystem, but we want to look at all the different ways everything connects in an ecosystem. Plants down here, the plants and algae in a pond are important because they provide oxygen and food for the animals. Now, boys and girls, I want to make sure you know this because you'll need to know it in future grades. Technically, algae is not a plant. Algae is similar to plants, but it also has some things connected to animals. So it's its own thing. It's not a plant, it's not an animal, it's its own thing. But it still does provide food for animals, and it can provide some oxygen also. So food chain, we looked at this yesterday. Producer, the pondweed, right? To an herbivore, the snail. Now, the funny thing is, do you remember yesterday? It was a slug down here as the decomposer. Snails are the same thing. So you could also consider snails a decomposer if you could consider slugs a decomposer. So again, this is not super set in stone or super sciencey, but it does give us a general idea, right? So that also tells us fish, they could eat the herbivores. They might also eat decomposers, right? Because, you know, if fish eat snails, then they certainly would eat a slug that was over here in yesterday's, and we know that they'll eat worms also. So this is not such a neat line. The way they showed it yesterday with that interconnecting web on the video is really a much better way to think about it. And animals over here, they have a tadpole, and you guys know tadpoles turn into frogs or toads. A turtle, now this is really more sea turtle types of flippers. You're not going to see that like that quite in a pond, but again, they're going kind of cartoony here. This isn't perfect science, but it helps us get the general idea. A newt is kind of like a salamander, fish, dragonfly, snail. We might find versions of these all around ponds here where we live. All right, guys, you might have already started coloring that while I was talking, and that is fine. You can keep coloring it while you're watching the video, as long as you can also kind of keep your brain on the video as well.
What are you working on, Nutley?
Only the greatest amusement park known to Squirrel. Nutley's Land of Wonder Fun!
Oh, very exciting, Nutley. Where's this amusement park going to be built?
In the meadow, after we get rid of all that pesky grass.
But what will the rabbits eat?
What they always eat. Grass.
But you want to get rid of the grass.
So, the rabbits have to hop a little further to find some. No biggie.
Oh, but it is a biggie, Nutley. Getting rid of the grass can lead to all kinds of changes to our home. We might even lose all of our acorns.
Professor, grass and our precious acorns have nothing to do with each other. You might need to sit down. You're thinking too hard. Come on, just have a seat.
Let me explain, Nutley. All things that are alive, like animals and plants, are called living things. Understand?
Living thing, living thing, living thing.
Good, Nutley. And do you remember what we call the total number of squirrels living in an area like ours?
Yes, Professor, I do. It's a population of squirrels. And there isn't only one population of animals and plants in our area. There are lots of them, like rabbits, deer, oak trees, fungi.
Impressive, Nutley.
I like being as impressive as possible.
Well, did you also know that all living things in our area make a community?
Really? We have our own community? It's not just for people?
That's right, Nutley.
Okay, but I still don't see what getting rid of a little grass has to do with our precious nuts disappearing. Please tell me that was just my imagination and our acorns didn't disappear!
It was just your imagination, Nutley. But while you're using your imagination, let's talk a little more about our community of plants and animals. Our community is part of something bigger.
There's something bigger than our community? Where?
If you look around, you will see that in addition to the living things around us, there are non-living things.
Non-living things?
Yes, things like sunlight, and water, and soil, and rocks. Anything that's not alive is called a non-living thing.
So what's the bigger thing you were talking about?
Well, all of the living things in an area put together with the non-living things that the living things use, that's all called an ecosystem. In an ecosystem, when one thing changes, it can affect many other parts. Like this tree, for example. This is a cottonwood tree. Because it needs a lot of water, cottonwoods usually live near streams, like this one. Now, Nutley, imagine this stream dries up.
Imagining?
Changing a non-living thing in our ecosystem, like the water in the stream, can cause another part of the ecosystem, the cottonwood tree, to die because it can't get enough water. You see, the living and non-living things are connected.
Okay, but I still don't understand how getting rid of the grass will make our acorns go away.
Now imagine all the grass is gone in the meadow. It's just a field of dirt.
Imagining?
All the rabbits, field mice, and insects that rely on grass will either move away or die off. If that happens, what will the foxes and the snakes eat?
And if there are no foxes around, all of the squirrels in the forest would want to live right here with us, where it's safe. And there go our acorns!
I don't mean to discourage your plans, Nutley. I'm only saying that it's important to understand how a change to one part of an ecosystem can affect other parts.
Instead of an amusement park, maybe I'll just put a swing in. Yeah, this will be much better. Nutley's Swing of Wonder Fun.
Oh, very exciting, Nutley.
Right, now that we've done the video, do you remember yesterday how we cut it out? So we're going to be cutting things out now, and then we'll glue it into our unit study book. All right, guys, over here, you can see my forest booklet from yesterday. And if I had put my forest booklet over a little bit farther, I could probably fit my pond booklet on the same page, but I didn't, so it won't fit. I am going to try to get it pretty close on this. No, I'm not. Because I don't want, I worked hard on these. I don't want my pages to get all squashed up when I open and close my unit study book. So I'm going to go ahead and just give this one its own spot on its own page. And we're going to put it together like we did yesterday. So the first thing we're going to do is to glue the food chain part down like we did before. And then we're going to stack them in the same order as yesterday's got stacked. All right, so here is my food chain paper. And then remember, we're going to be lining them up so that the titles stack on top of each other. So I'm going to put animals here like this. And can you see here, then we've got a little bit of space there. So I'm going to put a little bit of tape up here. If you guys don't have tape, you can try just folding over the top of this a little bit and put a little bit of glue right there to glue it down. It's not going to stick as well with glue as it will with tape. All right, you can look at your forest booklet to see what comes next if you need to. Plants comes on top so we can see food chain, animals, plants. And then just like with the forest booklet, the next thing up is the definition, the thing that says how the pond is, what it is, and then the very last thing is our cover. Here, our nice drawing, colored picture of the pond. So go ahead, get those put down into your book, and then just like yesterday, how you kind of showed me, you had your little booklet in your unit study book. This is the thing to send me a picture of again today.